Yes, everyone, today I am reviewing Superman 3, a film that is so bad that it actually warrants me to finally take off my glasses for your viewing pleasure. Without further ado, I will do that right now. My second pair of glasses. But in actuality, I am still reviewing Superman 3 today, and it wasn't really all that easy sitting through it. I mean, I did find some good things, some silver linings in the movie, but overall the movie is still really bad. But it's not absolutely the worst Superman movie out there. That goes to Superman 4. I'll get to that piece of shit soon. But Superman 3 would probably be like the second worst Superman movie. And then Superman 4 would be the absolute worst. And in my opinion, Superman Returns would be the least worst. Not that I actually like Superman 3, but there are some stuff in it that do kind of save it, and which warrants me to give it, the award for being the least worst Superman movie, but it's still pretty bad. But before I get into some of the bad things about Superman 3, or hell, even some of the good things, I want to talk about what Superman 3 would have been. I mean, this is the Superman 3 that was, written by one of the fellow producers of the Superman franchise, the old Superman franchise, Ayla Salkind. Salkind wrote a treatment for Superman 3 that would have included characters like Brainiac, Supergirl, and Mr. Mexi. I hope I'm saying that right. Many people who have read Superman comics would probably recognize him as the imp slash, elf character who can alter reality or anything, who it's really impossible to pronounce his fucking name, apparently, because it's literally just random letters, and if you look up the character Mr. Mexi, you'll probably see that. But this treatment would have included the characters Brainiac, Supergirl, and Mr. Mexi, and the story would have been that Supergirl, after Krypton blew up, she landed not on Earth like Superman, but on Brainiac's homeworld, and Brainiac would have took her in as an adoptive daughter, and Brainiac would have been a surrogate father to her, and then over the years, as Supergirl grew up, Brainiac would actually grow to not love her as a daughter, but actually love her as, well, an actual lover. That's really, really creepy. So Supergirl would then go to Earth, and she would be a gym teacher, I guess, and then she would become Supergirl, and Superman would take notice of this, meet with Supergirl, and they would actually hit it off, and they would actually be in a relationship themselves, and if you've read the comics, you probably have the same face of disgust that I do, because in the comics, Supergirl and Superman were not in a relationship, they were actually cousins. So seeing them in the movie actually have, a relationship, it's really disgusting and just really gross. I mean, I know they aren't related in the movie, but still, it's just kind of weird, especially if you've read many, many comics and have known these characters for something, and the movie just completely shits all over that. But then Brainiac would get all pissed because Supergirl loves Superman instead of him. So he would turn Superman evil, and then Supergirl would have to marry Brainiac so that Brainiac can turn Superman back to normal. And then Jimmy Olsen and Lana Lang would have been thrown into the mix. And then the movie literally would have, ended with them going back in time to the medieval era. And Superman would have saved Supergirl, Lana Lang, and Jimmy Olsen in the medieval era. So you can probably tell that this movie was fucking scrapped the second that Warner Brothers, was given that information. So instead we had Superman 3, which, yeah, I actually am a little bit more appreciative that we have Superman 3, this version, instead of that version of Superman 3. So I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about that before we actually get into Superman 3, because you might actually grow to appreciate this version of Superman 3 a little bit more than that version of Superman 3. But if you do want to learn a little bit more about that, a little bit more about the story, and a little bit more about what exactly would have happened in the original intended version of Superman 3, I will put a link in the description that will bring you to an article that pretty much tells you all about that, so you can go ahead and watch that for your, or read that for your reading pleasure. But for right now, let's talk about this piece of shit Superman movie. Now, before I get into some of the bad things, I am a very fair man when it comes towards reviewing movies, so I will get into some of the good things about Superman 3. Trust me, this won't take long. One is, of course, the acting, primarily with three of the actors here. One is, of course, Christopher Reeve, who plays Clark Kent and Superman. I honestly don't really need to even go into why he does a great job in this movie. Just watch my last three Superman, Super Month videos talking about his performance, and you will pretty much know. Pretty much the gist is that, he just is pretty much Superman, and he plays a great parallel between Clark Kent and Superman. That's the reason why I absolutely love his performance in this. But then we also have the love interest for the movie, Lana Lang, played by Annette O'Toole. And you're probably wondering, Lana Lang, why not Lois Lane? Well, Margot Kidder is in this pretty much in the beginning for, 1 minute, and then at the end for 1 minute. And I don't really know why. Some rumors circulate that it was because she didn't really like, Richard Lester as a director, and she was more used to, Richard Donner and his direction of the two Superman movies. So she pretty much left, and she didn't really want to do it, but she did at least have, she was a little bit, more professional to at least come back in the movie and explain why her character wasn't in this. She's pretty much just going on vacation, which really did piss me off, because at the end, it sounds like she had a way more interesting story than in this piece of shit Superman movie, because she said, like, I knew I had a great story when that taxi driver kidnapped me. I want to see that movie. Why didn't we see that movie? Instead we have Superman fighting a giant fucking computer. I want to see a Lois Lane spin-off movie. If they gave her her own comic book series, it only makes sense to give her her own movie. That would have been way better to see. Come on, get that movie going. But, instead we have Lana Lang as our love interest, played by Annette O'Toole. And she does an absolutely amazing job in this movie. And I actually, believe it or not, like the scenes between her and Clark Kent, because they just feel really human, and they just feel really nice, and just, all around, well, just really nice. They're done really well, and Annette O'Toole does an absolutely phenomenal job as Lana Lang. This was a character that I didn't really know a whole lot about in the comics. All I pretty much knew about this character was that she's kind of like the Gwen Stacy for Superman, the very first love interest, not Mary Jane, so shut up about that. That's pretty much all I knew about this character, but what she did in this movie was really, really good, and I actually liked the relationship between her and Clark Kent better than Clark Kent or Superman with Lois Lane, mostly because she actually likes Clark Kent for being Clark Kent and not for, Clark Kent being Superman, like Lois Lane. It kind of made me reflect how much Lois Lane is kind of a bitch in those other movies. Margot Kidder does a great job in those other movies, and I do like her character. She is very, spunky and really full of life. But, I just like Lana Lang just a little bit more better, and Annette O'Toole's performance as her was really, really great. And a nice little piece of trivia for you, a little fun fact, Annette O'Toole actually did return to the Superman franchise later in Smallville, the TV series that ran from, I think, 2001 to 2011, I guess that's right. She actually played Martha Kent, aka Superman's Earth Mother, Superman's, adoptive mother, which is actually kind of cool. It is nice that they, threw her in that just as a nice little Easter egg. And a little throwback to Superman 3. That was kind of cool. But then we also have, as pretty much our main villain, Robert Vaughn, who plays a business tycoon named Ross Webster, which is pretty much the best way I can describe this character, as just a giant ripoff, or pretty much what, would have been and should have been Lex Luthor from the other two Superman movies, which is another thing. Maybe they were going with Lex Luthor when they rewrote the script, but I guess Gene Hackman didn't want to come back. I mean, he didn't even come back to do reshoots when Lester took over the direction of Superman 2. So maybe they wanted to use Lex Luthor in this, but I don't know, and that's why they just kind of renamed the character and got a different actor to play him. But then there is a thing called recasting, so they could have done that, but they didn't. So, yeah, this character pretty much is just Lex Luthor. I mean, think about it. He's a business tycoon who pretty much just wants money, and his whole plot here is to pretty much use a weather system called Vulcan. Not that Vulcan, shut up. And, he uses this weather system called Vulcan to pretty much use weather against many other countries that won't do business with him, so he can get a monopoly on many different, items such as coffee beans and oil. That's really the plot of Superman 3. He pretty much gets the Richard Pryor character, which I will get to in a minute, to pretty much hack into a weather system so that he can use the weather system to make harsh weather. So it's pretty much the weather dominator from G.I. Joe to, ruin, countries or, states, resources like coffee and oil. That's literally the movie, just so that he can get a bunch of money. Even though he's already rich. That was kind of a thing in Superman 1. I didn't understand why Lex Luthor needed even more money, because he already seems super rich with that giant, evil lair. But here, it's the same thing. He has a huge company that's doing great. He has a whole bunch of money, but why does he need any more money? I guess because he's evil, but that's really fucking stupid and a really horrible motivation. And I'll get to the Richard Pryor character in a minute. But Robert Vaughn's performance as him is okay. He definitely does seem to be trying his best to be evil and just kind of, a slippery weasel kind of character, which is kind of cool. And he does actually have one of the only funny lines in this movie where Gus Gorman, Richard Pryor's character in the movie, calls him up and is like, the kryptonite didn't kill Superman. Doesn't really make sense. It weakens him, not kills him. And then, Robert Vaughn's character, Ross Webster, replies with, I asked you just to kill Superman, and you couldn't do that one little thing. I don't know why, but I kind of laughed during that scene. That was actually kind of funny. But his performance is just, okay. But going back to the whole relationship between Lana Lang and Superman or Clark Kent, I actually liked their relationship a whole lot, and I actually did like that they brought in this character, Lana Lang, because it actually felt like they wanted to actually tell the story of this character from the comics instead of just replacing Margot Kidder, because she wanted to come back. That's just how good her performance in this movie is. That's how good Annette O'Toole's performance in this movie is, and she just does an overall good job, and it feels more than just like a big replacement for Margot Kidder. It feels like an actual relationship and a story that wants to be told, and that's just my personal feeling about it. I'm just looking at other stuff that I like. Now that really pretty much sums up all I pretty much liked in this movie, so let's get to the stuff that everyone wants to hear, me bitch about the movie. Now, one thing that I absolutely hate about this movie, which starts right off the bat for the movie, which is great timing, is the opening. And if you've seen this movie, then you definitely know how bad the opening is. Hell, even the opening is so bad that I couldn't even get the title for the opening to be on my TV screen this time. I had to get the theatrical trailer on the DVD on this thing to, as, the title for the movie today. That's how bad this title is. Pretty much the title is, it's a huge disappointment from the last two Superman movies. Mostly because the last two Superman movies had awesome titles. Like, if you've seen the last two Superman movies, they're great titles. Flying through space with the cast and credits names flying at you, with that awesome kick-ass John Williams scene in the background. It's a great opening, great opening. And even the Richard Lester version did an absolutely amazing job with some scenes playing from the first movie, sort of, as a little recap. For the people to get, into the story of the second Superman movie. They're a really great openings. So what do they do to possibly top the openings of those two movies? By having shitty slapstick and Star Wars scrolls. No, I'm dead serious. That's literally what's in this movie. Pretty much the casting credits in the titles of the movie is pretty much shown with a Star Wars scroll, like, the little, scrolling up thing. But the thing that really pisses me off about that is that it leaves the bottom half or the top half of the screen just completely blurred and fucking warped, so that you can't even pay attention to what's going on in the... You can't even tell what's going on in the actual scene and in the actual opening, which is really fucking... It bugs the hell out of me. You can barely see what the hell is going on. It just makes you completely unappreciate the whole opening. And then, if that weren't enough, instead of having an awesome John Williams theme or flying through space, you have shitty slapstick, and you have circus music playing in the background. I'm dead serious. Just fucking circus music and unfunny slapstick. And the slapstick here is absolutely nuts. It doesn't even make any damn sense at all, and it pretty much is just whatever they thought would be funny, but is not at all. And I actually had to write down pretty much all of it here, so try to pay attention, and I'm just gonna read it off. I'm not even going to try to improvise it. I'm just gonna read it. Pretty much, a guy falls in, or he walks into a pole, or, whatever. He pretty much falls, and he knocks over this little stand of toy penguins, and then some chick on rollerblades falls and knocks over 3 telephone booths. Then someone's dog runs off, and meanwhile, one of the toy penguins catches on fire, which goes nowhere. And this blind dude, this blind guy mistakes a street painter for a seeing eye dog after a seeing eye dog runs after the dog that ran off earlier. Remember when the phone booths were, fell over? Because that one chick on rollerblades fucking knocked him over. And then we see a bank robbery happen, out of nowhere, and then the robber runs in front of a car, causing the car to crash into a fire hydrant, and the car starts filling up with water as the man is literally drowning to death. And Superman comes out of nowhere, and I'm just sitting there thinking, Superman, this guy just robbed a bank. Why don't you go after that guy? This guy is yeah, this guy's drowning, but after you're done with that guy, go and get the fucking robber. No, it's ridiculous. And I didn't even mention a few things because it was just that ridiculous. Like, some guy having a bucket on his head, and instead of just pulling it off, he just walks clumsily, knocking over a bunch of shit. Why? Because it's funny, I guess. And then you have a mime who trips over a bunch of gumballs, which doesn't really make sense. Wouldn't he just squash the gumballs? And some guy gets knocked into like a manhole, and the blind dude walks on his head so that he doesn't fall into the manhole. It's really fucking ridiculous. Like, that's the best way to top the epic openings of the first two movies, just by having shitty slapstick with shitty music and shitty opening credits. What a fucking load. I mean, and that's pretty much the best way to sum up the movie. It's definitely not even a sequel to the first two Superman movies. And I can definitely see why, when Bryan Singer made Superman Returns, he paid attention to the first two Superman movies instead of the first two, 3, and 4, which is a great idea in his mind. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but I'll get to that when I review Superman Returns. But this movie has a bunch of slapstick, not only in the beginning, but pretty much in the whole rest of the movie. Just nothing but a bunch of fucking slapstick. And I bitched about that in the Richard Lester version of Superman 2. I bitched that, the slapstick just ruined the whole movie and it kind of took away from the tone. Here, it actually does make a whole lot of sense. It actually does fit the tone of this movie. Probably because the Richard Donner version of Superman, when Richard Lester took it over, he was just randomly putting in slapstick anywhere that he possibly could. When here, the movie was built pretty much around that. So it actually kind of fit this a little bit more. Now, is the slapstick in this movie funny? Or the jokes in this movie funny? Well, some of it, like I mentioned that one line for earlier, but I really can't think of anything else. But the slapstick, even though it's not really all that great, it definitely did fit in this movie because it was built around it instead of just lazily shoved into another person's project. So, I guess I can give the movie that. Now, one thing that's also just horrendous is the villains. I mentioned Ross Webster. He's pretty much the business tycoon who wants money, who is just a complete rip-off. Excuse me, who's just a complete rip-off of Lex Luthor from the first two movies. But then we also have his sister, because yeah, that's so threatening. Some business tycoon and his sister trying to do evil shit. It's totally threatening, am I right? And his girlfriend. Again, it's, oh my god, so threatening. I'm pissing my pants right here. Who's like subplot goes nowhere. Like, she's apparently acting dumb and ditzy and just all around stupid. But then when no one's around, she's like reading these really smart books and she's talking in techno-babble and stuff like that, which it goes nowhere. It has like no point to be in the movie. It just goes nowhere. Minor nitpick, but once you notice it, you're being like, why was that there? It makes no sense. And then we also have Richard Pryor, which whenever talking about Superman 3, you cannot ever not talk about Richard Pryor in this movie, who, I just want to set the record straight and just let you guys know, I am not a fan of Richard Pryor. And not because I've seen his work and I don't like it, I just haven't really seen any of his work besides this movie, and he's just absolutely not at all funny in this movie. Like, if someone were to tell you that Richard Pryor were funny, and then he would point to this movie and tell you that he's funny in this movie, slap that person in the face because they are absolutely lying to you, because he is not at all one bit funny in this movie. Basically, to sum up, his performance, he pretty much says the same thing at least 2 or 3 times. Like, in that same scene where Gus, calls up Webster, Richard Pryor's character, Gus Gorman, says that, there was an unknown element in kryptonite. No one knows what unknown means because it's unknown, right? No one knows what unknown means. That's pretty much the best way to sum up his performance. He's a bumbling, idiot, but who's good with computers. That is the plot of the movie. Gus Gorman works for this, business called Websco, I think. I don't know. I completely forgot. And, he's not really being paid a whole lot. He said he would be paid a whole lot, but he isn't. So he hacks into the computer and pretty much solicits, a bunch of money for himself. Then the CEO finds out, and he's like, you know what, this guy is really good with computers and really good with hacking in computers. Maybe we can use him to an advantage. So he uses him to hack into a bunch of weather systems so that they can create weather again, like they're down here from G.I. Joe, to, completely ruin a bunch of countries', crops, so that he can get a monopoly on that and pretty much get a bunch of money. That's the plot of Superman 3, pretty much. That's just a huge step down from Superman 3. I mean, that's just a huge step down from the last 2 Superman movies. Like, the last 2 Superman movies, you had Lex Luthor getting missiles, oh my god, nuclear missiles, oh my god, what's he gonna do with those nuclear missiles? And the second movie, you had 3 evil versions of Superman, which were awesome and badass, they were pretty much going to take over the world. Oh my god, that's really awesome. What are they going to do in the third movie? Well, this one guy who already has a bunch of money is going to destroy a bunch of countries' crops, like coffee bean crops. And he's going to ruin the American oil already is, dude. You're a little bit too late on that. Or early. Yeah, I guess he was early. And he's just gonna get a whole bunch of money, even though he already has a bunch of money. I'm hyped! I mean, that's the plot of Superman 3. It pretty much is just a rich dude who wants to be even more richer. I guess this one guy, Richard, I guess that's it, Richard Pryor, to get him a bunch of money. It's terrible, and these villains are a huge step down from the, speaking of step downs from the last two movies, these villains are horribly, just a giant step down from the last two Superman movies. The last Superman movie, it had 3 evil versions of Superman that were just wrecking everything. We're gonna take over the world, and they were just gonna take over the world. And what do you have in this movie? You have 4 completely made-up villains that do absolutely nothing exciting or at all cool or badass. It's just this rich dude who wants to be a little bit more richer, and then Richard Pryor and his sister and his girlfriend. Again, do I even have to go into why this is just a huge step down from the last movie? Like, stop making up super villains for a Superman movie. Like, Superman may not have a whole bunch of super villains like Batman or Spider-Man or whoever else, but you can make interesting villains. You can make villains interesting. They're not just immediately interesting. You can do that yourself. Fill in the fucking blanks. Do it yourself. But this is just a huge step down from the last two movies with their villains. It was horrible. Also, talking about the Richard Pryor character, Richard Pryor does, try his best in the movie. He definitely does have a lot of energy. He definitely is trying a whole hell of a lot in this movie to be really, really funny, and I will give the movie that. But some stuff that his character does doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Like, I mentioned that the Webster dude hires Richard Pryor's character, Gus Gorman, to pretty much hack into a weather system so that he can create weather and destroy a bunch of crops so that he can get money and monopoly on those crops. Well, he goes to Smallville. Yes, Smallville is actually in the movie, which doesn't really, nothing really, happens with that. But he goes to Smallville, and he goes to the Websco company in Smallville to hack into the Vulcan weather system from there, which kind of makes the question, why can't he just hack into it from, another computer somewhere else? Maybe I missed that in the movie. But, he has to, he has to sneak, he doesn't have to sneak into that, company. He doesn't have to sneak into the Websco in Smallville, but he has to pretty much get this one security guard plastered off his ass to, to hack into the Vulcan weather system, which kind of makes you ask the question, why doesn't Webster just say, hey, this dude named Gus Gorman is going to be stopping by here to do a couple things, let him in when you see him? It could be just done like that. You didn't even have to get this guy plastered off his ass and commit a lot of crimes. You could have just said, hey, this dude's dropping by, let him in when you see him, okay, bye, I'm the CEO. He's the fucking CEO. His name is the company. He is the company, but fucking no. Just have this dickhead, get this one dude plastered, even though you can just say, hey, this guy's dropping a few things off, let him in when, you need to. Like, you could have just let him in. You could have said to let this guy in, then you could have just knocked the guard out from there. Stupid. Just really, really dumb. It's a big plot hole and it's just stupid. Now, the effects in the movie, for the most part, are just alright. This is pretty much where the effects for the Superman movie just sort of took a dip in quality, and they just started to look really, kind of bad. Like, the effects are okay. There are a lot of moments where they do look really, really good. Like, there's a certain scene at the end where Superman gets shot by a missile, and he knocks into to the Grand Canyon. It is kind of a cool effect when he just gets knocked into the wall of rocks. I don't know why, that was just a cool scene. But there are a bunch of other scenes where you can obviously tell that the effects are just really, really dated, or they don't show any effort in trying to hide the wires in the movie, at all. Like, there's a scene where he swoops in a field in Smallville to save this kid named Ricky and his dog from being cut up by those little field cutters. I don't know what they're called. The thing that chased Lightning McQueen in Cars in his dream. Yeah, those things. And he swoops in to save him, and you can, the wires are right black as this remote, and probably as bulky, and it probably as thick, and you can see the wires, and it's like a really quick cut, and if you like slow it down or pause it, you can obviously see the wires. You don't even have to slow it down or pause it, you can just see the wires right there. And I guess maybe that was their intention. Maybe they were like, it's just a quick shot, no need to, cut the, no need to, crop the wires out, no one will be able to see it. Well, I saw it, probably a lot of other people saw it, so guess you're wrong about that, dickhead. And there's also a scene where the evil version of Superman, which I'll talk about that in a minute, swoops in or just lands in the junkyard. You can obviously see the wires again. They don't put any effort into hiding the wires. But for the most part, this movie, the effects are okay, but there definitely are a lot of moments where you can spot the wires, and the effects look really, really dated. Just all around, really, not really all that great. Also, it's earlier in the movie, which is again another kind of bad special effects. Superman literally freezes an entire lake because he needs to put out a fire at a chemical plant, and the fire, and the firemen, whoever, don't have any water. Like, that's your job, to have water whenever there's a fire. You don't have water, you're a fucking idiot. He pretty much freezes the lake. And he picks up the lake and throws it on top of the fire, and it just melts. First of all, how did the lake not break? And he's not, like, holding it from, like, the middle, like, the center of the lake. And even if he did, I'm pretty sure it still would just completely break. He's holding it from, he's holding it, like, from the edge. And here's the other whole thing of the lake. And, it doesn't at all break. Like, it would just, like, snap, wouldn't it? And I don't think it would like melt like immediately when you threw it over a big fire, like especially that much ice. I don't think it would, completely melt and just make, rain. That's just really stupid. It's a really bad effect too. Like, it's really, really bad. How did the villains this is actually a plot point in the movie. Earlier in the movie, Superman pretty much, the Webster dude hires Richard Pryor to tell him to create, bad weather in Colombia so that he can get a monopoly on the coffee bean crops. Again, this is your supervillain. He just wants to get rid of coffee beans. Actually, the more you think about that, that is kind of evil, but, he pretty much tells him to create weather and to get rid of, the coffee bean crops in Colombia. So he tells, Richard Pryor to create weather, and Superman thwarts that, and then they're like, this guy's going to get in our way, so let's pretty much create kryptonite, or find Superman's only weakness, and pretty much get him out of our way, and, just stop him completely from ruining our plans. So they get Gus Gorman, so of course this isn't going to end well. He pretty much finds most of the kryptonite ingredients, but there's this one unknown ingredient in it. And he pretty much is smoking cigarettes, so he's just like, oh, tar. I mean, he's not going to smoke it, so who cares? But apparently that one little ingredient of tar pretty much creates sort of a fake version of kryptonite, and, it doesn't weaken Superman movie. It doesn't weaken Superman. I said Superman movie, what the fuck? It doesn't weaken Superman, but it pretty much turns him evil, and I'll get to that in a minute. But, the villains at the end, they pretty much have this supercomputer, and they pretty much, and then the supercomputer is supposed to like break down anything or any one or thing's weakness, and pretty much use that against them. So of course, when Superman shows up, the computer scans Superman, and it's like, oh, kryptonite, so I'll just shoot kryptonite at it. And then one of the people goes like, yes, we finally perfected the kryptonite. It's like, how? Like, before you didn't, before you made a shitty, cheap version of kryptonite, which didn't even make Superman all that evil, but now when you need to have kryptonite perfected, you just all of a sudden have the kryptonite perfected, which is really stupid. It's like, we established before that you couldn't perfect the kryptonite, but now you all of a sudden can. And I know, some people may say, well, maybe the computer did it. Well, that's also another big plot hole in this movie, is how does the supercomputer, at the end, create the right version of kryptonite? Like, how does it, like, maybe it, like, and some of you may be saying, well, maybe it, maybe it had the ingredients in its, data banks or whatever. But how did it create it? Like, maybe it had the information to, all the ingredients for kryptonite, but how did it make it, like, out of nothing and shoot it at Superman, like, as a beam? Like, makes no sense. Like, it's all of a sudden, right when they need to, they can all of a sudden just make easy kryptonite. It's really fucking stupid. Yeah, that's, it creates a kryptonite from nothing, and I'm totally using from now on quote-unquote supercomputer. How does the quote-unquote supercomputer not tell that, that acid is behind Superman's, back, and that Superman's gonna use that thing against him? Like, again, this is now earlier in the movie, Superman, and I mentioned this before, stops a chemical plant from completely blowing up and going on fire. And in that scene, it's established that there's this little form of acid, which if it's overheated, then it can just create like an absolute, even worse acid. Like, it doesn't particularly work unless it's overheated. So Superman pretty much flies back to that same chemical plant. He gets a thing of acid, and that's the way that he's gonna, stop the supercomputer. And he holds it behind his back, and the computer scans Superman and knows that's holding something behind his back. And then it reads 0, problems with this. Like, 0, it's not gonna at all harm anything. It's just 0 problems. Like, 0 casualty or whatever, and 0 problems. And how does it not know that? How does it not know that it's acid? Like, acid is very, very dangerous. It's like 0 danger level, like, at all. It's acid. It's going... this is the same quote-unquote supercomputer that can break down anyone or anything's, weakness, but when it comes towards scanning something behind someone's back, that's its weakness. It can't scan the danger level of acid. If your computer, it is, again, the quote-unquote supercomputer. It can't scan something behind your back that's highly dangerous. Like, if it's overheated, it just fucks everything up. And that is the way that Superman pretty much defeats the quote-unquote supercomputer in the end. Oh, great ending there. It's behind his back, and it can't tell that it's lethal. And the thing it can break down anywhere anything's weakness, but it can't tell if acid is a harmful substance against itself, against the computer. Like, really? It's horrible. And I have one minor little gripe, but then again, this isn't really a problem with the movie. It's pretty much a problem with the next movie, Superman 4, and I'll get in that piece of shit in a minute. Well, not in a minute, later, in a different video. But Lana Lang gets a job at the Daily Planet at the end of the movie. And yet, she doesn't show up in the fourth movie. Again, that's not really this movie's problem. That's a problem with that movie. And I'll get into that, when I go into that movie. But then again, there's just one minor little thing. One thing left over, because, this video isn't long enough, is the evil Superman. And I mentioned before that, the villains, they pretty much make a false or fake version of kryptonite, and instead of harming or weakening Superman, it pretty much makes him into an evil, sort of false version of Superman that, is just really quote-unquote evil. It makes him into an evil Superman movie, and I'll get into why right now. Because he doesn't do anything evil. It just turns... All that the false kryptonite turns Superman into is a alcoholic pervert with, like, a 5 o'clock shadow. And for some reason, the kryptonite makes his suit darker. Like, I swear to God, it makes his suit, like... His suit earlier was, like, light blue with light red and light yellow. But now his suit, when it's... with the... false version of kryptonite, it's like dark blue, dark red with dark yellow. So apparently kryptonite not only weakens Superman, but also weakens his clothing. I guess so. I guess that, yeah, it totally makes sense right now. And it should be like a big deal that you have Superman turn evil. Like the last movie, Superman 2, that movie pretty much had 3 evil versions of Superman, and now you have an actual evil, corrupted version of Superman, and you do pretty much nothing with it. All he does is, he doesn't commit, like, crimes, or he commits one thing, I'll get to that in a minute, but this is an evil Superman. He should be, like, wrecking a city, or just making some serious damage, and really messing up people's lives and stuff like that, because he's evil. He doesn't do really anything all that evil. All he does is commit like minor inconveniences, like he makes the Leaning Tower of Pisa not leaning anymore. He makes it straight, Which, like, the logistics of that, like, if you were actually to push the Leaning Tower of Pisa back into a straight tower, it would break, wouldn't it? And also, that's not even, like, an evil thing. That's, like, actually, in a way, helping out someone. So, that didn't really even, that wasn't anything, even a minor inconvenience. And then he just starts flicking, peanuts at, like, liquor bottles in a bar because, but the liquor bottles break because he's Superman, they break because he flicks them really hard. And then blowing the ceremonial flame out at the Olympics. Again, these are, like, minor inconveniences. The only thing that he does that's actually evil or close to being evil is, completely, like, puncturing a hole in a ship that's carrying oil. But that's really about it. So I guess that actually kind of confirms that Superman did, in fact, cause a BP oil spill. So, Superman, you're a dickhead. But that's really the only thing that he does that's evil. And he pretty much is not even evil in this. Besides that, he's not evil. He's just a alcoholic pervert. Because, and that scene was actually funny. I don't even think it was meant to be funny. Like, Superman is literally in a bar, plastered off of his ass, and he's drinking, like, liquor. Like, he takes a shot, which is so funny, but yet will probably, ruin your childhood. Like, if molestation doesn't ruin your childhood, then seeing Superman drunk off his ass and still drinking liquor probably will ruin your childhood. And it's also funny as hell, too, so that's really awesome. And he's a pervert because he actually has sex with the villain's girlfriend. It's off screen, but it's implied that he did do that. Superman, that was weird. And then he also is, like, coming on to Lana Lang and not saving this one guy from falling off a bridge. And a truck from falling off the bridge, and the truck falls off the bridge because he was more busy with, hitting on Lana Lang than, saving the bridge. So that pretty much sums up Superman 3 as a whole, and it only took, like, almost 40 minutes. God, that's impressive, isn't it? But Superman 3, I think I'm going to have to give it, like, a 5 out of 10. And a lot of people may be saying that's giving it a lot more credit than it deserves. But I honestly am only giving it a 5 out of 10 Red Suns because of Christopher Reeves, the scene between Christopher Reeves and Annette O'Toole. Those two actors in this movie pretty much saved the movie and actually made it easier for me to watch because I knew that there were as many... For, like, every bad scene in this movie, there's at least two, great scenes between those two actors. And I really wish I could see a lot more with Annette O'Toole in it because she's a really great actress in this movie. I really wish I could see more. And she's, like, actually really hot in this movie. I know it's kind of weird me saying, but she is kind of hot in this movie. I don't know, I just have to think of redheads. But anyways, that pretty much, sums up Superman 3 in my opinion. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10 Red Suns, and I'm only giving it for the scene between Christopher Reeves and Annette O'Toole as Clark Kent and Lana Lang. Those two actors are still absolutely amazing, and that's pretty much the only reason why I'm giving this movie that. Also, there were a couple funny scenes between, here and there, but not really all that much. So that pretty much sums up Superman 3 in my opinion. I'll put a link in the description so that you can read the article that describes, what Superman 3 would have been if it went with the original script and by Ayla Salkind. But that pretty much sums up for me. So I'll come back with my review of Superman 4. And then after that, I'll do a special video for Super Month. So really wish me luck because I have to go and watch Superman 4 now. Fuck.